On the 28th of October, Red Bull entered into an accepted breach agreement with the FIA, admitting that they were guilty of going over the budget cap in 2021 with a procedural breach and a minor spending breach of less than 5%. Red Bull were given a $7 million fine and a 10% reduction in CFD and wind tunnel testing for the next 12 months. Although Red Bull and Christian Horner still maintain that their submission was below the cost cap, entering the ABA suited both parties because the FIA wanted the matter closed without it going any further, and it also meant that even though Red Bull might not be happy with the punishment, entering an ABA meant that no championship points would be taken away. The FIA found that Red Bull had exceeded the cost cap by just over £1.8 million, which equates to 1.6%, although they also acknowledged that had Red Bull correctly applied a tax credit in their submission, the overspend would actually be reduced to just over £400,000 or 0.37%. In the ABA summary, the FIA actually found 13 different areas where Red Bull incorrectly adjusted or excluded various costs. I'll leave a link to the ABA document, which is only 3 pages long, in the description below. And before you ask, yes, catering really is on there. In terms of how the cost cap breach reflects on Red Bull, it doesn't matter how you look at it, it's not good. Even if you think that the £400,000 made absolutely no difference to Red Bull's performance and had absolutely no effect on any race and certainly not the outcome of the championship, the problem is, this is a really bad look for Red Bull and more importantly Formula 1. When the governing body finds the team that won the previous year's drivers and then this year's drivers and constructors championships guilty of breaching the cost cap in the very first year that it was implemented, to the outside world and potentially fans that might not know too much about Formula 1, it doesn't fill people with confidence to have the championship winning team associated in any way with breaching a fundamental rule which to many people is cheating. Now Christian Horner has been firm on the fact that even though they've been found to breach the cost cap, in no way did it have any effect on the performance of their car. Now there is no definitive answer to this question, and so in a way this is where you as a fan have to make your own decision if Red Bull gained a competitive advantage. But the reason why this is such a difficult issue to judge is because if your team spent too much on catering as an example, that means that potentially more money was able to be spent in another area, which is why too much money ended up in the catering. And the one area, especially during a title battle and a period of regulation change, that the teams won't want to skimp out on is development of both the current car, i.e. the 2021 car, and also next year's car, which at the time was the 2022 car. It's also difficult to know how much X amount of money will give you in X amount of lap time. Alfa Romeo team principal Frederick Vasseur said, "You have to understand that sometimes with 200,000 euros, you can bring a big up day, and if you overshoot the budget by this, it's a couple of tenths for more than one race." Ferrari team principal Matteo Binotto said that if a breach was somewhere in the region of 4 million, for us, 4 million is what we would spend on new parts during a season. 4 million is also enough to pay the salary of 70 technical people who can come up with ideas and solutions good enough for maybe half a second per lap. Even in just those 2 comments, you can see why it's so difficult to even roughly estimate what Red Bull could have gained, if anything. If the breach was £400,000, then by Vasseur's logic they could have gained up to 4 tenths, and by Binotto's logic, they could have gained up to 500 by hiring 7 extra engineers. There is no exact science, and there is no exact money to lap time ratio. It's down to your own principles of what you think breaking the cost cap represents, and then your own interpretation of how much, if any, performance Red Bull could have gained. When it comes to Red Bull, watching Christian Horner's press conference, the one interesting comment that he made that really piqued my interest is when he said this.
You know, I'm astounded that there are no other teams that have found themselves, in this position. But good for them that 8 of them have fully complied.
To me, that's a very curious comment to make because why would Horner be surprised that anyone else would find themselves in this position. It's the same as making an illegal car and then saying that you're surprised that no one else made an illegal car as well. Just like no team should find themselves breaking the technical regulations, no team should find themselves breaking the financial regulations. To me, in a way, this does taint the success of Red Bull over the past couple of years. I'm not saying necessarily that they gained a performance advantage because of their minor breach, because I genuinely don't know, but it's more in the sense that I don't think it's right for the best team in Formula 1 with the best driver in Formula 1 as well, who should be leading by example and embracing the challenge of still being able to win despite the cost cap trying to slow the bigger teams down, and at the very first hurdle, they break something that's so important for the integrity of the sport, and that could have given them a performance advantage. If it was Williams or Haas overspending, we'd be laughing right now at how they still couldn't do a better job after spending more than anyone else. But when it's the champions, it doesn't speak highly of the team and the organization, and ultimately, it makes the sport look even worse. However, the best way in F1 to silence critics and any criticism of your team is by winning. And Red Bull have a driver in Max Verstappen that has been doing as much winning in 2022 as the fans and media have been doing talking. But how does all of this reflect on the success that Max has had and the championships that he's won? I wanted to know how the fans felt about this, and so over on my Twitter, I asked, does Red Bull breaching the cost cap taint Max Verstappen's championships in any way? Over 15,000 people voted, which was kind of mad, so thank you to everyone who follows me over on my Twitter, with 55.5% voting no and 44.5% voting yes. I wanted to get a rough perspective of how the fans felt, and even though the majority voted no, the fact that it was quite close to 50-50 is pretty significant. The difficult thing with Max is that nothing that happens to Red Bull is going to take away from the fact that over the last 2 seasons, he has been the best driver in Formula 1. In 2021, it was quite close between him and Lewis, given the massive pressure that both of them were under, and in 2022, even if we take away the second half of the season when the car has been dominant, Max already had Ferrari beat in the first half of the season anyway, when it was much closer. Over the past 2 years, no one has matched his level of speed, but more importantly, consistency. He has pounced every single time Ferrari has made a mistake. He has been so dominant when the car has allowed him to, that he makes the difficult look easy and boring at times. And if you look at the races where he's dropped points, it's usually because either the team or the car has let him down. He has just been relentless. The problem is that when the same team that gives you this incredible car with which you're breaking records is also breaking the cost cap, which makes the team look bad, it's only natural that some of that is going to rub off on Max as well. That's not to say that Max has done anything wrong, because he hasn't. But that old saying in Formula 1 of we win and we lose as a team, it goes both ways. You can't benefit from a great car and have all of that glory without also taking some of the flack when the team makes a mistake as well. That's not to say that Max is not a deserving champion or anything like that, especially in 2022. The way he's beat Ferrari to the ground, hell, Ferrari could have broken the cost cap, and even then I don't think that they'd be good enough yet to beat Max and Red Bull. And when you look at the points gap, I know I said that judging the advantage that Red Bull may have got is difficult. That money is insignificant looking at the gap Max has over everyone else. But again, even if the money is insignificant, the principle of the championship winning team breaking the cost cap is not. All of these things, the budget cap breach, which could have given Red Bull a performance advantage for 2021 and 2022, and then also the unavoidable circumstances with which he won the 2021 world title, all of it stirs up those same strong emotions, and all of it does taint some of Max's success. I mean, how can it not, given what the FIA admitted after Abu Dhabi, and after what the FIA found Red Bull to be guilty of. However, regardless if I think it taints some of Max's success or not, what there is no argument about is the level of driver we're witnessing. There's this funny argument that I've seen popping up on social media on whether Max can be described already as an all-time great. Yes he can. I know his championships haven't been the smoothest up until now, but we're looking at someone who is comfortably the best driver of his generation, and someone who, if he retired right now, is the youngest ever race winner and has as many championships and wins as Fernando Alonso. Max is undeniably an all-time great driver right now. I think that's why this Red Bull situation is so frustrating. Max has done nothing wrong, and yet his team are the ones who partly are the reason for the cloud that seems to be over both of his championships. It doesn't take away from the greatness we're witnessing race after race from Max Verstappen, but it does take some of the shine from the success that he's achieved thus far. Well, there you have it. I hope you did enjoy this video. I know this is a very big topic. I look forward to hearing what you have to say in the comments below. And if you did enjoy this video, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That is the #1 way that you can show your support. And I'll see you in the next one.